You guys should hear how many different ways I try to start this show, but in the end, I just like, hello, friends, and welcome to episode 586 of the Juicebox Podcast. See, it's simple and easy. On today's episode of the Juicebox Podcast, Carol is with us. Carol's from the Canadian. I just mixed Canadian and Canada together. Somehow I was going to say Carol's Canadian or Carol's from Canada. And instead I said Carol's Canada. Oh, it's too late now. I would have made that the title. Damn it. Anyway, while you're learning about Carol, remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. I've lost my rhythm. Please, what are you going to do? I mean, oh my God. Please consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. I guess I don't know it as much as I can just say it after I start it. That's interesting. Please remember, wow, that's weird. Now I'm thinking about it. Stop thinking. While you're listening, please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. That's it. Thinking is my greatest enemy. This show is sponsored today by the glucagon that my daughter carries, Gvoke HypoPen. Find out more at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. This episode of the podcast is also sponsored by Touched by Type 1. Learn more about them on their Instagram or Facebook pages and at touchedbytype1.org.
I wish I was where you were.
Why is that?
It's cold here.
Oh, I hate the cold. I don't know why you're anywhere cold. It's a ridiculous idea. You should leave right away.
We had snow 3 days ago.
Where are you? Ish?
I'm in northeast New Brunswick. Pretty much within an hour I can get to Quebec.
But
I'm on the side of Newfoundland. But I'm originally from Halifax, Nova Scotia, actually.
Those are all places. I'm just kidding.
They are actually. If you know Sidney Crosby,
yes.
Trailer Park Boys, they're all from my hometown, Cole Harbour.
Really?
Yes.
You got
surprisingly, yes.
You got Sidney Crosby and the Trailer Park Boys?
Yeah.
It's a nice mix.
And actually a couple other people, Classified. A lot of people know his music up here. We all camped together as kids at the same campground. And Canada actually is a pretty small place in a way.
No kidding. Yeah, I'm from Philadelphia. I think I'm supposed to hate Sidney Crosby. So
it's okay. Most Canadians don't like him either.
Oh, really? What a wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. We're recording. I'm just going to tell you that I was standing in a tunnel with my son yesterday, and he's hitting, and we're getting done. And then we started talking about different things and talking about how once you make it to Major League Baseball, you're basically one of the best 1,000 baseball players on the planet. And how we watch them and then just openly mock them for sucking. And you're like, wait, what? They're so much better than everybody else. And then I just thought, oh my God, can you imagine you starting when you're 4 or 5 years old and you make it, you're 23, you're standing out in the field and gets quiet for a second before a pitch and just hear somebody yell at you, you suck. And you're like, my whole life, and then that made me think of it when you said,
just comes crashing down at that one person.
Well, when you said nobody likes Sidney Crosby, I was like, he's a good hockey player. What else does
he is a good hockey player, but I guess what a lot of people don't like about him is he's not as rough and rugged. So when Don Cherry kind of outed them at the start and called him a hot dog player, it kind of stuck with him. Because, Don Cherry, before his whole outing there, was, everybody loved Don Cherry. So when he said something, and he was young and no one really took him seriously. And Can
I thank you before we get started? And I got to figure out, your microphone's a little poppy, but you said about already, which I really appreciated. And if you can do that a couple more times during the hour.
Oh, don't worry. You will hear that multiple times along with other weird Canadian words, I'm sure.
Thank you. What kind of a mic are you using? Because you're a little poppy, it's weird. Is it?
I'm using the one that came with my phone.
Oh,
that paid, I paid $700 for the phone. So you would assume that the microphone would be half good.
Do you have hair touching the phone by any chance?
Not at all.
Okay. All right. We're good then. So we record, you're being recorded the whole time. So,
Awesome. I hope you have a beeper because sometimes, I might drop the odd bomb.
Oh, I'll just cut the word out.
Perfect.
Yeah, I gave up on the beeping about a year ago. So much work. It just really is like you have to, because you're doing double the work. You're cutting out.
Very true.
You're cutting some of the audio out, right? So you can't hear.
But it would be kind of fun to hear someone like me go on a rant, and all you heard was beep boop boop beep boop beep and beep boop boop boop.
That has happened a couple of times.
That would be kind of fun for a moment, anyway.
For a moment, yeah. All right, so you introduce yourself, and then we start talking. Any way you want to be known. Meaning, by the way, you don't need to use your full name if you don't want to. Stuff like that.
Well, my name is Carol. I'm from Halifax, Nova Scotia, in your guys' northern neighbor there, Canada. And I now live in a little place called Nigawak, New Brunswick.
Wait.
How I found the podcast and how pretty much my story would be is I work as a carpenter and a roofer. That's one of my multiple trades, plus I'm self-employed. And all of a sudden one day I started not feeling good. And then I have multiple autoimmune diseases. So for like 8 years, everything always got blamed on that. Even blood work, they would say, it's a little off because of this or because of this medication. And, finally something didn't match. So I kind of crashed and ended up in the ER and, went through the whole battle of our free healthcare Canadian fun up here. And luckily, I actually found this podcast very quickly because I'm the kind of person who goes on Facebook and, puts out that post and joins 1,500 groups and pretty much, finds everything. And your podcast actually came up a lot of times. So I figured I'd jump on.
Cool.
And honestly, compared to what we get up here in Canada for information, it was something even my doctors and my nurses didn't even understand. Because if you're an adult up here and you get diagnosed with diabetes, they automatically assume type 2. And I'm sure it's the same way in America.
Sure.
But in Canada, we have very limited resources, period, let alone if you get diabetes. So down there, I noticed you guys, you have camps and stuff. That would be, I think they should have adult camps where we all get together with a case of beer and, just bitch about our diabetes.
Carol, can I stop you for a second? I have to ask you a question. You're not building something right now, are you?
No, that's actually a woodpecker outside of my sheet shed.
I'm not hearing that. Are you maybe touching stuff while you're talking or moving around or anything? Because I'm hearing like a lot of scraping and like little.
No.
You're.
Well, I think my microphone might have moved a bit. I'll hold it so it doesn't move there.
That's weird. No, maybe it's just that you're so far away and in the middle of a frozen tundra. That could be it.
It's quite possible.
Yeah. Well, and we won't harp on it, but I just want to make sure that you're not. Some people get. Like they move their hands or they rub things. They don't realize they tap on the desk.
You mean like get fidgety? No, surprisingly, I'm actually not too fidgety since you complained, that you couldn't hear my microphone. So I'm trying to be like all like, still like talk. But unfortunately, I am a hand talker, so I might twitch a bit. So I apologize for that.
Don't apologize. There's a little bit of noise while you're talking, and I don't want people to miss what you're saying.
But there is like 4 woodpeckers just going crazy outside in the woods right now. So I don't know if you're getting that as a background noise, but...
Well, I wish you wouldn't have said 4 woodpeckers going crazy this early in the episode because it's a goddamn solid title for your episode. Anyway, okay, so let me make sure I understand. So you go in and, you said you have a lot of other autoimmune issues that came prior. So what other ones do you have?
I have a condition called ankylosing spondylitis. I'm being diagnosed for lupus. I have fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis. I have psoriasis. I have a condition called bullous pemphigoid. I learned I had Hashimoto's thyroid disease right before I got diagnosed, actually, a couple months beforehand. What else? I have anemia. I know I'm missing some.
Could you just list the autoimmune diseases you don't have? Would that be easier?
Honestly, I think it would be, but some of them I can't even pronounce myself. Some of them, like there's a couple in there. Raynaud's syndrome, the one where your fingers turn white.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fun one.
How old are you?
I'm 41 right now.
How long have you had these things?
In the past 10 years, they all started coming up. Actually, about 12 years. Right after I had my middle child.
Baby birthing.
And that's what I tell her all the time she sucked the life out of me. Because she's a teenager now.
May I say,
she's 16.
I don't believe you're supposed to tell them that.
I do, though, unfortunately. Okay. It's okay, though. She understands because she believes it herself. Like, her father agrees. Like, she's fun. But I'm very proud of her. She's on Team Canada for cheerleading. So she has, even though she's been a pain in my bum, she has done big things.
Very nice. That's nice. Okay, so prior to this first thing happening, end of your 20s, nothing going on. You just were nothing. Okay.
I was actually at the time working as an automotive mechanic, and life was great. I had two small. Actually, I had my first kid very young, and after my second kid, I had always complained about back pain, and they checked me for everything, and they told me that my sugars were kind of elevated, but where I was pregnant, they weren't too concerned. And life went on. I was very active. So nothing really came up, just a lot of nausea, but they always blamed being pregnant on that. So had my baby, went back to work, and, everything was fine. And then about 2 years later, then I started getting the not feeling right. And they told me I had anemia. And at that time, it was anemia. And they just told me I had arthritis.
What'd they do for the anemia?
Nothing. They told me to eat some more iron, a lot more red meat, and pretty much, I've always eaten right anyways. I'm not a big takeout person. We do a lot, we do a lot of home gardening and stuff like that. So if we don't get it ourselves, we always get it from a market. Like, we're pretty healthy eaters. So I never really thought of food or anything. And, again, life went on. So 5 or 6 years goes by and the pains are getting worse. Now they're telling me after MRIs and stuff, and you wait a while up here for this, by the way. So if you complain about a pain today and you're not dying, you wait about 12 months to get an MRI.
Is that the free healthcare that everybody here wants so badly?
That is the free healthcare that everybody wants up here. So, some provinces are better than others, but unfortunately on the East Coast, ours is not. So if you complain today, they just give you painkillers. And they'll usually start as naproxen or something, and they, tell you to, limit your daily, everything, and, wait for your appointment. So when the year comes up, you'll get your MRI, your CAT scan, or whatever it is you're going in for. Even simple blood work. Like if you get blood work today, we'll say, it's about 2 months sometimes to get into a doctor to get the results of that blood work. So now you think about it. If you complain today about a problem, you wait a year for an MRI. That MRI now takes about, 2 months sometimes for the doctor to get back, unless it's, really, really, really bad. And then to get into their office, now you're talking anywhere between 6 to 8 weeks to get an appointment to get blood work. Now you're up to 2 years for something that started bugging you 2 years ago.
Yeah. And then when you have a number of different things going on, then that process happens over and over.
And then you'll get to a doctor and they'll be like, ooh, that doesn't sound, and you'll wait all this time. And then they'll be like, that doesn't sound like me. You should go see this doctor instead.
Oh.
And then you got to do it again. So to get to a rheumatologist to get diagnosed with ankylosing spondylitis, which it's a deformity that will happen in your spine. It's kind of, if you ever see people who are, as they get older, they're very hunched over and their shoulders are pronounced and, they have a hard time walking, very seized up. Yeah. That's what it is. Actually, the lead singer of Imagine Dragons has it.
I'm looking at it.
I can't think of his name, but he does have it.
It's an inflammatory arthritis affecting the spine and large joints. That sounds right?
Yeah.
More common among men, usually begins in early adulthood, typically.
Now, do you know why they say it's more common among men?
Because women don't complain as much?
The nickname of it is called the working man's disease. So I've been doing trades since I was 18 years old. And when I say trades, like up here, we call anything, like building or fixing anything, that's a trade. So I have multiple licenses in different kinds of trades over the years. Mm-hmm. So I started off as an automotive technician. I did exhaust fabrication. Then I moved on to carpentry, cabinetry, roofing. And then now I kind of do art with carpentry. Plus I run a small business based off of different art and stuff which I make. Mm-hmm.
But you're always working with your hands, leaning forward, like
exactly.
that kind of feel on your feet.
They never really, with women, they don't really think of diagnosing us. Like women, it's very hard to get a diagnosis with it. They'll usually tell you have fibro or, something. Mm-hmm. It's a certain blood marker, I guess. It's an HLA-B27 marker. It's all in the same lines as diabetes with the whole HLA family. And autoimmune diseases come in pairs. So usually if you get one, you'll get two. And if you get another one's going to come along. That's what I've learned over the time. But the problem up here is if you want to learn anything besides basic, you have to do it yourself.
Okay.
So example, when I got sick with diabetes, before I actually got diagnosed last year when COVID started, in the end of February, we all got really, really, really sick. But COVID wasn't here yet. Mm-hmm. So my spouse and our daughter, they didn't get as sick as I did. So I went into the hospital and they told me I had an upper respiratory infection. And they gave me an antibiotic and they told me to go home. So I went home with the antibiotic, but nothing really happened. But because of COVID, you don't want to go back in because, they make it seem like you shouldn't unless you have COVID. So I sat and waited. And I guess between the time the antibiotic ended and when I actually went into DKA, I had a kidney infection because my blood sugar was so high. Mm-hmm. But no one ever checked my blood sugar because I don't look. And this is what they told me, is I don't look like a diabetic. Because for 40, at the time, I was just before my 41st birthday. Yeah. I'm in shape. I work, Like I don't. And their eyes up here, an adult who's diabetic, you're overweight, you're lazy. It's very stereotypical. Mm-hmm. And they automatically assume you're type 2. So when I get really sick, no one really paid attention to it. They just kept telling me it was something else. So I called my doctor and said, I'm having a really hard time breathing. My chest hurts, blah, 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 blah. But because of COVID, she couldn't see me in the office. So over the phone, she told me I had asthma. And then 2 days later, I drove myself to the hospital and they told me my blood sugar was 28? It was 28 point something. I don't know what it is in your guys' American terms.
I'll tell you in a second.
And my A1C was 18.3.
Jesus. Okay, hold on.
And they didn't understand how I drove myself there, let alone waited in the waiting room for 6 hours and was still coherent when I got to them.
Yeah. What did you say your blood sugar was? 28?
It was 28 point something.
And what did they have your A1C at?
18.3. Yeah. And I hadn't eaten in a day or so because I was so nauseous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So and your blood sugar was like, for people listening that don't use that scale, her blood sugar was over 500. That's crazy. And it had been like that a long time if your A1C was that high too.
Yeah. What they had told me is that because of my job and because of the fact that I'm active, I was always burning the over amount of sugar off and keeping my body in a fight or flight mode. Mm-hmm. And then when COVID hit, everyone lost their jobs. So even though I was eating good, I was still eating carbs.
Sitting still, not moving around as much, not working as hard.
Exactly. Because we weren't allowed out of our houses. Like if you wanted to walk your dog, you had to stick in a certain block radius. It was, and this was right in March. Mm-hmm. It was one person per family to go grocery shopping or anything like that. Like it was you couldn't do anything. And at the time we lived in the city and we had a very small yard. And when I say small yard, like, I mean, it was literally our house, a driveway, and a pallet of sod for grass. Mm-hmm. So you couldn't do much. So going from working 12-hour days, 5 to 6 days a week, plus coming home and being busy, that didn't happen anymore. So I was just ticking, you know what I mean? Tick, tick, and just building up. So when we couldn't work in March, it was, 3 or 4 months, it was just building up. And I guess that's why I was so high, they told me.
Right. No, it makes sense.
They described it as I was really sweet, is pretty much like.
That's just that's because of the sap, what do you guys put on the pancakes?
Maple syrup.
Yeah, that's it. That's what happened.
You don't understand, man. I put that shit on everything. Like, I put it on my rice. Like, this is before I got diagnosed. You know what I mean? So literally, I put maple syrup on bacon. I put it on rice. I put it on eggs. I dip my French fries in it. Like, literally, like, everything. Like, we even in the wintertime, if you know someone with a tap, you can pour it on the snow and you can make your own candy with it. So you roll it up on a sucker stick and it's like a maple taffy.
You got to move you people somewhere warmer so you can find other things to do.
Yeah, but with the cold comes the fun. Like, we have 4-wheelers up here. Like, we have our own land in the middle of, like, kind of like the back roads up here. So up here, I can jump on my 4-wheeler and I can go more places than I can in my car. Or if you have a snowmobile up here, you can literally make it anywhere. Like, there's the good with the bad. Yes. But we also live in a fishing village. The ocean is right beside me. So I'm willing to almost freeze to death sometimes to be able to experience all that too. Wow. Because in the city, we didn't have that. So
yeah. No, that sounds nice. I mean, honestly, outdoors is nice. I'm teasing, but the cold is insane. And
oh, you're in what, Florida?
No, I'm in New Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah. And
you're even still warmer than us.
Oh yeah. And it's way warmer here. And I don't think it's warm enough here. So that's really fun. Well, you've been on quite a journey for the last 10 or so years.
Well, it's not even like the little bit I told you, that's not even the start of it. So when I made it to Emerge, like I said, they told me I was in DKA, but because of COVID, I was sent home within 12 hours with a prescription for metformin. They had done a GAD test, a C-peptide, and something else, and they told me to go home and wait for results. So they sent me home with metformin and insulin, Lantus, to use as directed, but no one gave me any direction because I hadn't seen an endo team. And then I had Humalog, again, use as directed. But again, all they told me was 10 units at each of my meals. But I don't always eat. I don't eat 10 units of food.
I'm trying to imagine what you do. So you're holding prescriptions that say use as directed on them, which is what they all say. And then no one helps you with what that means.
And you're told to go home.
Yeah. What do you do next? Because you're probably still in DKA.
So I still was. So they gave me, I guess, 2 bags of fluid and an antibiotic for the kidney infection I had. And they sent me home, like, you know what I mean, and they told me if I have any more problems to come back in. But I waited 7 hours to get in there, kind of thing. So
am I remembering this right? Wait a minute. Had you been on an antibiotic right before this as well?
Well, back in March when I first got sick there with the upper respiratory infection.
Okay. So you had back-to-back antibiotics. I'm sorry, I cut you off. They sent you home.
So they sent me home with it, and then it wasn't working. Like they gave me what you call a blood glucose meter, the One Touch or whatever. They told me to go to the pharmacy and get it. And I was taking what they told me, but my sugar wasn't coming down. And it just, like, I could get it to 13, but then it would go right up again. And then I was crashing down to 1.8. And then I was going back up because no one had told me anything about pre-bolus carb counting, write down your meals, figure out some stuff. It was just 10, 10, 10, 10.
Well, that's not the only issue, Carol, in my opinion. You can't treat DKA with just the way people manage diabetes. Like you need to be hospitalized, and that needs to be brought down kind of slowly.
I guess from what I've learned is if I was a kid, I would have gotten that like a little better.
Well, they wouldn't have thought you were type 2.
Hospital, I actually wrote the patient advocate in the hospital authority and described my experience and told them, this is not right. And they wrote back and apologized
and send you free maple syrup. Is that what they did?
Pardon?
Did they apologize and send you free maple syrup?
God no. So they apologized and they explained that, they understand it shouldn't have happened, but unfortunately it did. But because of COVID, there's sometimes things happen. But the kicker is at the time, we only had like 4 cases in our whole province.
Yeah, they couldn't see DKA because of COVID. That doesn't make sense.
That's what they told me. It's right in the letter that because of COVID restrictions and the fact that they needed so many beds open in case the wave came that they were waiting for, they had to send me home. And because I didn't present as someone, because of where I have so many other conditions, I'm so used to pain and stuff that I hold it well because I always have a little bit. So the body aches and the headaches and stuff, I wasn't in there crying and losing my mind because it was the first time I had ever felt it. I can take it because I'm used to being in pain sometimes. So where I didn't present as someone in high distress, they felt that was another reason to send me home.
Yeah, but the A1C is enough to stop. Like anybody, like that's enough. Whether it's type 2 or type 1, or you're complaining or you're not complaining.
It's not the first, like this is not the old, if you think that's bad, the rest of it's going to blow your mind.
Okay. Gvoke HypoPen has no visible needle and is the first pre-mixed auto-injector of glucagon for very low blood sugar in adults and kids with diabetes, ages 2 and above. Not only is Gvoke HypoPen simple to administer, but it's simple to learn more about. All you have to do is go to gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. Gvoke shouldn't be used in patients with insulinoma or pheochromocytoma. Visit gvokeglucagon.com/risk. Have you checked out touchedbytype1.org? You haven't? Why? You trying to make me look bad? Is that what this is about? This personal between you and I? Because if it's not, head over there. Touchedbytype1.org. Just pick around a little bit. Look at their programs. See what they do. Learn about their D-Box program. If you're newly diagnosed, you're going to love it. I don't ask a lot. You know what I mean? Touchedbytype1.org. Check it out. Follow them on Instagram. Follow them on the Facebook machine. All right, that's it. We're getting back to the show. Quick ads. You like it? Huh? Of course you do. You say, Scott, thank you for keeping the ads quick. It's my pleasure, really. Of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't say, have you gone to t1dexchange.org/juicebox yet? Have you? t1dexchange.org/juicebox. If you're a U.S. resident who has type 1 diabetes, or you're a U.S. resident who is the caregiver of someone with type 1, you can take a quick, less than 10-minute survey that will help people living with type 1 diabetes and support this podcast. t1dexchange.org/juicebox. And as the music winds down, I'll remind you to check out the private Facebook grade. The private Facebook page for the Juicebox Podcast. It's called Juicebox Podcast Type 1 Diabetes. Over 17,000 people just like you talking about type 1 right there in the privacy of that page. It's just another lovely benefit of listening to the Juicebox Podcast. There's links in the show notes. Links at juiceboxpodcast.com. Let's get back to Carol.
So after I got through all of that and I had to go back because my sugars wouldn't come down properly because the metformin was making me super sick. I couldn't keep food down, but I'm on all this insulin. So I'm going super low.
Mm-hmm.
And I go back to the hospital and they make me wait and emerge again for another 6 hours. But every time I go into emerge, because of diabetes, all the symptoms of diabetes are the same as COVID. So every time I go, I have to get tested, I have to get isolated. And they still do. Once it's only diabetes, they just quickly do something and they sent me home.
So they can't.
So
even if you come back, the same process happens.
I came back crying. The second time I came back because I didn't know how much to use.
Right.
And they told me that it was going to be, they told me to check my sugars, and my sugars at the time, I think, were 20, 21. And they told me that it wasn't that bad. My vision was getting kind of spotchy, and I was getting the tinglies in my hands and feet. And they told me again that because of, there's no beds, there's no doctors available, that they couldn't help me. All they could do is just, watch me while I wait, kind of thing.
This is a people hospital, right? This wasn't for elk and moose and stuff, and you just happen to be close to it. This is for people?
Nope. This is our city hospital.
Oh, congratulations.
And so I got pissed off and I left. You know what I mean? Like, because I'm like, okay, and I sat in the parking lot of the hospital. And that's when I started looking up stuff. I'm like, okay, if they're not going to help me, I'll do it. Like, and I kept telling myself in my head, I'm like, girl, you can build a car, you can build a house. You know what I mean? You can do all this stuff. You can figure this out. And I still didn't know yet if I was type 1 or type 2, because you have to wait 10 days for the results of these GAD tests to come through. And I put out my plea on type 1 and type 2 groups, Canadian groups. And then I found you guys. So I was reading a bunch of different posts, and a lot of people's stories kind of related, but just obviously I'm a different age. And instead of just waiting for the doctor, I just started applying stuff. I'm like, either way, whether I'm type 1 or type 2, like if I just do this, what they're talking about, what's this pre-bolus they're talking about? And, trying this and this, and I just started slowly chiseling away at it. And I started, first day, not so much. Day 2, day 3, I could see a little bit. And I was like, huh. And then all of a sudden they called me back and they were like, you're type 1. And I was like, okay, cool. What now? And they're like, well, an endo should be in contact with you soon. So to me, when someone tells you, they're going to contact you soon, and you just got diagnosed with, up here, it's a critical illness. Like I can actually claim it as a disability, so I can get a disability tax credit and stuff. So I waited for this call from this, endo team that was going to help me out. A week goes by, no one. 2 weeks goes by, no one. Now my spouse is getting mad. So he calls and he's like, my spouse is, waiting for a call from you guys, because he knew if I called, I'm going to lose my mind on them. So he was trying to, be the calmer person.
Right.
And they said that they didn't have my file yet. And it would probably be about up to 30 days because of restrictions. They could only have so many people in office that day. And, someone would get back to me. Well, I got diagnosed June 3rd in 2020. When I had my first appointment with an endo team, it was November 15th, I think, 13th or 15th.
That's 5.5 months later.
Yes.
Oh my God.
So when people say that listening to your podcast was more than they learned, they're not joking.
No.
Because by the time I made it into my endo, I got myself a Dexcom from listening to your show.
Wow.
Because you had kept saying, get a Dexcom. And I'm very fortunate that my spouse is a veteran, like for Canadian military. Mm-hmm. So we have a very good medical plan. So I got my general family doctor to write me a prescription for Dexcom just to cover me insurance wise.
Right.
And I ordered the Dexcom. Started the subscription, $2.99 a month, and we just let it build up on our credit card. So when I finally got into the endo, they were surprised at the fact I had a CGM. Guess where my blood sugar was from listening to your show?
Ooh, wait.
At the time, 7.6 or 7.5, I think it was.
Wow.
From 18.3.
No kidding. Good for you.
And it was, and honest to God, it was no help at all from anyone up here.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm like stunned. I did not expect to hear this from you today. And so it really has put me back on my heels a little bit. I had no idea that something like this, I guess I hear people talk about it, but having it laid out like this is really something else.
Oh, it gets even better.
It can't be crazier than what you've just said. But nothing, unless I said it can't be crazier than what you just said. Unless at some point, better. Are you going to ride a polar bear at any point in this story?
I wish I could.
All right, never mind.
I'd love to see a real polar bear. But so after I finally get into them in November, and I had to do blood work, I think it was like a week before I went. So they had something to see when I went in. And that was something I requested. Like I told my family doctor, I was like, okay. And I luck in, she's really close. Like she's not only our family doctor, but she's from the same village my spouse is from. Mm-hmm. So I can message her and be like, hey, and I can get in a little quick with her, but she's very limited to what she can do. So I was like, hey, I have an appointment coming up with my endo. Can you put me in for some blood work and, put this stuff on it? And at the time they had me on 50 milligrams of Synthroid. And I asked for my TSH to be checked because I'd remembered you had said anything, around anything at 2 it was.
Yeah, over 2
you need Synthroid.
Attention, yeah.
And you also had made an episode about your wife you weren't sure and just threw her on some anyways. So how I got the Synthroid was my family doctor. I said, hey, I have all these symptoms. My tongue's swelling, my hair's falling out. Can you hook me up with some Synthroid? I know it's like, I feel like I'm talking to a drug dealer sometimes. Mm-hmm. I'm like, can you give me some of this so I can, it's not going to kill me? And she goes, sure. And even with that 50, my TSH was still really low. So when I hit the endo, she was surprised at the fact that my A1C was low. I'm already on Synthroid. And she's like, holy shit, did you go to medical school? And I'm not even joking. I looked her dead in the eye. I said, no, I learned it from a podcast.
It's got to be embarrassing for the doctor, don't you think?
She literally swallowed and looked at me and she goes, oh my God. Like, are you kidding? And I'm like, not at all.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? She should know if she ever hears this. I didn't even go to college.
That's amazing. Because when I go into her office, there's all kinds.
She's probably got all kinds of stuff.
The diplomas and stuff.
Yeah.
Dude, I barely finished high school and I did trade school because I knew I could at least make some money and not have to go to school for a whole lot of time. And I am their unicorn patient because of you.
Oh, I'm glad.
Up here to get an insulin pump. So in order for me to go back to work, I had to have control of my diabetes because I work, up in like buildings and stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm 4 stories in the air. I'm on Zoom booms. God knows what I'm doing. So my boss isn't going to let me at work if I'm roller coastering, Like they have, empathy, Like, right, so, but being MDI, it's very hard to do a vigorous job because you have to overcarb so you don't burn it. But then sometimes you don't do the work you think you're going to do. So next thing you know, you need insulin, but you're, hanging up here doing whatever, and you don't want to pull out your pen. Like, mm-hmm. So it makes it very difficult. So at that November appointment, I literally walked in with a notepad and I knew I owned that room, because I knew I was going in there fully loaded.
Wow. And
I told them straight out, I want a pump. And they're like, you can't get one for usually 2 years. I said, no. I said, I've learned, like as long as you have control, you understand MDI in case your pump fails, I should be able to get a pump. I said, I have coverage. Why can't I get a pump? And they kept giving me, well, we want to see it for at least 6 months. So I hit the 6-month mark and now my A1C is 6.1 or 6.2. It's almost below 6. Mm-hmm. And I got my pump. And they told me I am the first person that their clinic in Moncton, New Brunswick has ever given out a pump to under 6 years, under 2 years.
Maybe they should learn something from that instead of just,
I was actually told by my nurse that I missed my calling. She's like, you should have been a diabetes educator because they learn from me now because they look at we have Diasend up here for my T-Slim. Mm-hmm. And, unless I have a cheat, you'll probably see my post on Facebook where like I had lobster the other night.
Oh, yeah.
That was me.
Yeah, I saw your lobster. It looked good.
With that lobster, the lobster was great. It was protein. It hit me a little bit later, but the potato salad, the broccoli salad, and all the other stuff that I overate on kind of put me up to 8. But they told me they have never seen someone with pump control that I have.
Oh, this
And
house
I
would
don't
kill
have,
them. If they were here, they'd have a stroke. They wouldn't be like, what am I
well,
looking
I've
at?
actually directed them to your Facebook group.
Oh, thank you.
And my nurse has listened to a couple, like just the part of the pro tip series.
Mm-hmm.
And she straight out told me, she's like, if I let my patients listen to that, they wouldn't know what to do. I said, then that's a problem on your end.
Yeah.
I said, because if they had the proper knowledge and education from you at the start going in, they wouldn't be so scared.
Yeah.
I said, because it's all fear. I said, because you guys don't teach anyone anything.
Right. Let me jump in for a second and say something. First of all, I Googled Zoom Boom. They're really cool. Now I want one. And, and the other thing is this, so a little story that I think you said that somebody in your office said, you missed your calling. You're better at this than we are, that kind of stuff. It made me think of this. While my son was out trying to find a college to be interested in him for baseball, he had to go to all these workout things, and they'd play sometimes for days on these fields, and hundreds of kids would show up, and everyone, got to play, and you were being evaluated by all these colleges. And usually on the last day, at the end of the day, they would run out of pitching before they'd run out of kids that had to hit. So they'd go into the dugout and say, can anybody throw a couple of innings for us so we can get finished? And my son by then was exhausted and tired and wanted to go home. And he'd put his hand up and say, like, I'll pitch if it gets us out of here, but I'll do it. Right. So we'd go out and do it. And this would happen almost at every one of these things. And then they would catch us on the way out, and someone would grab him and say, hey, you had one of the best velocities here today, or you threw harder than anyone else today. How come you didn't work out as a pitcher? And my son would say, just because I throw faster than them doesn't make me a pitcher. It makes them not a pitcher. And yes. I feel that way about the story you told. Like, you can't, that is such a bullshit thing to say to somebody. Like, wow, you went out and learned more than us. You missed your calling. No, you're not good at your calling.
How they backtracked on it.
Yeah,
so, once I got my Dexcom and I allowed them to see my data, no one's really taught me how to carb count yet. Mm-hmm. Like, I've gone to dietitians, but they're still telling me the same, free foods. This is where they killed me at the start, was vegetables are free, meat is free, and only read the labels. And, if it's a fiber, just take away the fiber. You know what I mean? They never, ever talked about fat and protein. Mm-hmm. Like, oh my God, like if they would have told me about fat and protein besides just carbs, I think I would have brought my A1C down so much quicker, because I don't eat a whole lot of carbs.
Right.
Like, we're not like a keto low carb host, but we like to eat well, like I said. So, but to me, eating well was eating chicken, eating, pork, beef, avocados and stuff. But I didn't realize that all that fat and protein was affecting my diabetes.
Yeah.
And I couldn't figure out why. I'm counting the carbs and I'm pre-bolusing and I'm doing everything, but I was getting that rise. And they kept telling me, well, you're doing something wrong. And I'm like, no, I did everything you told me to do, and it's still not working.
That's horrible.
So thankfully, you and Jenny did the episode on fat and protein.
No, I'm glad you like that.
So I started listening to it. And then all of a sudden now I'm 95% in range. Like, I still got a spike. I mean, you can't be flat all the time.
Yeah.
But I have my ranges set between 3.9 and 9.5 at the time.
Wow.
And I was still in range, like, very well. But every now and then I would go low, because they were just telling me to carb count 1 to 20.
And that's that.
And that was it.
Yeah.
1 to 20. And it wasn't working for me. So I had to start playing with it myself. But anytime I called them for help, I had 22 appointments canceled between June and I think it was February the last time I counted, like February this year. And it wasn't just in-person appointments. Like, it was phone calls, Zoom calls, like in person, like 22 appointments canceled. So I gave up on my endo team, and I just took everything in my hands. I think I drove my spouse nuts, because I would listen to like your thyroid podcast, that one, that one was good because that's how I got up to 150 milligrams of Synthroid.
Okay.
And got my TSH down to, I think it's 1.5 or 1.6.
That's excellent. Addie would be very happy with that number.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when I'm doing all this stuff, my doctors are getting mad at me because first it was you brought your A1C down too quick. And then they got mad at me because I had a low here and there. And I'm like, instead of highlighting how good I've been doing, you call me to pick on me about one thing. I said, but on top of it, you didn't teach me anything, but you're getting mad at me if I make a mistake. And if I would have listened to them, I would have been high. But according to them, as long as I was between 8 and 12, they were okay with that.
I have an email here that came this morning from a pediatric endocrinologist, and I am hoping that they'll come on the show. And I don't want to tell you what it seems wrong to just use her words. But it really makes me feel like you can reach these people. And that if they're in the right mindset to see it, that they might go, oh, wow, the thing I'm doing for people isn't really all that valuable. Maybe I should think about this a little differently. I'm beginning to wonder as you're talking, if the sad part of your story, which was, because of COVID, they kept like giving you the bum's rush out of the facility over and over again. If that isn't what maybe eventually saved you, like is forcing you to pay attention to it for yourself.
Well, I think it did. Like that was kind of the silver lining of it. But what makes me wonder too is I'm sure even beforehand, like most adults I talk to with type 1 up here, they don't know a whole lot because they ask me all the time. They're like, oh my God, like how are your numbers so well? Because I'm in like, type 1 Canadian groups. And we always do the number share and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm not perfect, but I keep some good lines.
Right.
And they wonder, how do you do it? And it's amazing how it's pretty broad up here, the lack of basic education and knowledge. They kind of cookie cutter everyone up here. So people like me, when I ask questions and stuff, I've actually been written up as non-compliant. Because I asked too many questions and I didn't just do as I was told. I actually had one teen tell me I was going to kill myself by making my A1C as low as I was.
6?
Below 6. Like right now I'm at 5.8.
Oh, wow.
And they told me anything below 6.5 is dangerous because that means you're having too many lows in their eyes, but my low percentage on my Dexcom is below 1%.
Wow. Oh, you're doing great. And
it's usually because I'm at work and, I burnt through more car, it's usually a car burnt thing. I'm still kind of learning that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, sadly, only my nurse really sees how good I'm doing. But the problem that I'm trying to think I can word it without being mean. The problem that over the years, they've given everybody such little help and information. It would be kind of hard to take everything you guys do and start giving that to people. Like I have an ex-boyfriend who long before I had diabetes, actually, I was dating him when I first started getting sick back in 2011. And he was a type 1. And when I was with him, I cared about his diabetes to the point where I made him start eating right like me and eating at the market and really helped him in the 3.5 years I was with him. So I find that really helped me when I got diagnosed as type 1. But I'm terrified of needles. So that was always my biggest fear when I get that. Like when I get diagnosed, when I cried because I could not wrap my head around the fact that I had to give myself a needle now multiple times a day.
Cal, let me say, it's incredibly interesting. Through 45 minutes of talking to you, you have never once complained about having so many ailments.
No.
That's amazing.
Because honestly, how I take it is I luck in that I'm one of them people that I don't succumb to it. I own it. So even I was talking to my dietitian last week because of the Warsaw method. So that really worked out well for me, along with like using, because like I said, I eat a lot of fat and protein. So when you guys did that episode, I was like, boom. I was like, oh my God. That was the puzzle piece I was missing. You know what I mean? Like to finally nail that spike I couldn't get rid of.
Did it feel extra good because Michelle was Canadian by any chance?
Yes. And when she was Canadian, I was like, yeah. So when I used it for like almost a week before I called my dietitian, because they're I know they want to believe what I do, but the problem is if they do, they'll probably be outed for doing it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
no, I hear you.
To think outside the box up here is really taking a chance, because if everybody did what I did, they wouldn't know what to do. I don't think.
I have to say to anyone listening who's in the profession, if you are knowingly not helping someone, you are willingly hurting them.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. So.
Because they are. Because they make us feel like we're overthinking, we're crazy. We should just sit back and wait and listen. But we know our bodies. And especially when someone who has multiple conditions comes in and tells you, I don't feel right, listen to them. Because they've already been living with issues for times beforehand.
You've been paying attention to this
stuff. So what they've been doing for these past couple of years that was working, all of a sudden they come to you and they say, hey, this isn't working anymore. Don't just push it aside and try to up a pain med. Like, listen, because I can tell you that if I would have, they told me I probably had like type 1 diabetes bad. They said for probably at least 2 to 3 years, but not really, really bad until probably they said probably 8 months is when like the honeymoon ended enough to where my body couldn't keep up anymore.
Right.
But during that time, no one listened to me. So when I was complaining about pain, they were like, oh no, it's this. Oh no, it's that. But I never changed any of my pain meds. All I did was get my blood sugar in control. And I can tell you that between getting that and my thyroid in check, I feel better now than I did before I ever complained about getting sick.
May I say something? I think that the next step for me, if I'm you, is your iron still bad?
Well, actually, my iron, how I got control of that was during this time period, no doctors were listening to me. Like they were just, pretty much treating me like I was just looking for pain meds, because I'm a medical marijuana patient. So I have been for 12 years for pain, because they gave me a lot of narcotics when, opiates were first introduced and were safe to use, they said. And then when I started getting addicted to them, they blamed me. So when I called them for help, they were like, well, you asked for them. And I'm like, oh no, you are not pulling that shit with me.
Carol, Canadians are supposed to be friendly. What's going on here?
Well, we are to other people, I guess. Sometimes
not to each other.
To our own people. But so I was like, okay. And I was already smoking weed recreationally because I was a single parent of 2 kids and I'm not a drinker. So it was kind of like
good a reason as any.
Oh my God. Like some women use wine, Xanax, walking the dog. Me, I need a joint.
I have to stop you for a second. Was walking the dog a euphemism, or did you really mean going out and walking the dog?
No, like really mean walking the dog. Like friends of mine are like, oh my God, I took the dog for a walk today and I feel so much better. And I'm like, no, I own a bulldog, so I don't have to walk it.
I totally thought you meant your, and I'll just bleep that out later. That's 100% what I thought you were saying.
Well, you can after dark that part if you want.
Yeah.
But so where I was a medical marijuana patient, a lot of doctors didn't like that either because I wasn't taking the pain meds. So it was kind of a catch-22 because I knew it worked, but it wasn't, because as you know, weed only became legal here, I think, 6 years ago?
Okay.
When Trudeau got voted in, which I didn't vote for, by the way. But 2014, I think it was. So
I took his weed, but I didn't like him.
Yeah, well, it's not even paid for is the worst part. Like, even though I have a medical prescription for pain, I have to pay full price for my weed.
Oh, they won't cover it.
Even though I have a prescription for it. The only way in which I can get help is I can claim it on my taxes as a medical expense.
Okay.
But if I had cancer, I would get it paid for. And if you're a veteran in the military, you get it paid for.
That's interesting line.
But if you don't use it for anything. You know what I mean? Like it's very limitedly paid for up here. It's supported for use, but you have to pay for it. So they would pay for all my pills and stuff, but they won't pay for my CBD oil. But with the pills, I take the pills. I need another pill. Now I need a pill to sleep. Now I need a pill. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, they're happy to pay for all that,
but they won't pay for the CBD oil.
Yeah.
So,
well, the CBD oil company needs to get a better lobbyist, and then that would be covered too.
Yeah. So I'm hoping one day it happens, but not yet.
Gotcha.
So I take a drug called Cosentix. It's a biological drug. That's how I got around having to take a lot of pain meds, because it's one injection. But I've learned now, being diabetic, it causes a lot of insulin resistance.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to make a special profile, double my basal. But my doctor thought I was crazy. So I got diagnosed with the pain conditions and everything, and they wanted me on this biological drug. But I just got diagnosed with diabetes, and I didn't want to do, dealing with diabetes, throw this biological drug in, you know what I mean? Like I didn't want to dump that much into my body fire at the time. So I just dealt with the diabetes, and I was like, I'll get to the pain, because I've already been dealing with pain so long. You know what I mean? Like I can wait a little bit longer.
You just named the episode. Did you hear yourself do it?
Did I what?
You just named the episode. Did you hear yourself do it?
No.
Body fire.
Nice.
Yeah, that's it. You just named it on your own.
But the thing is once I started getting my diabetes in control, I didn't have as much body pain. So I went from needing I think it was 600 milligrams of this drug. Now I'm down to 150, because having my blood sugar in control and my thyroid in control really lessened my pain.
But we didn't answer the question, did we, about your iron? Where's your iron level at now? Your ferritin? Do you know?
I don't know, but they told me it's perfect.
Yeah, don't listen to them.
Because,
they also told
I
you
listened
your
to
TSH
this
was
doctor.
perfect.
The reason why I listened to this certain doctor is because he's the one who found it. When no other doctor would listen, he was a pain clinic doctor. And he's like, look, you are on enough medication to kill a small animal if you add it all up, really.
Yeah.
He's like, something else is fueling this fire.
Right.
Let's do a full blood panel. We're going to check your iron. We're going to check everything. And he put me on an iron infusion.
Oh, good for you. That's what I was going to say.
So, but I laugh because where you keep doing the maple syrup reference is it looks like maple syrup in an IV bag up here.
I think it looks like rusty water to me.
Well, up here, just when I first see it, begins with a V. I can't remember the name of it.
Venifer.
That's it.
Yeah.
And when they first hooked it up to me, I was like, oh my God, it looks like maple syrup in a bag. And she kind of laughed, because I was like, it's my Canadian super sauce kind of thing. Like,
tell her, listen, I don't want to inject it. Can you mix it with snow and I'll eat it like a lollipop?
Pretty much. But after I got 3 injections of that, that was last summer. So it's been almost a year. My iron and it's him that's checking it. You know what I mean? Not just my general practitioner.
Good.
It's that doctor. You know what I mean? So since he was the one who found it, and so I really trust, him looking at it. Because I see so many other doctors that I lose track sometimes of who, like what is sometimes. But he told me, he was like, you are like right where you need to be. Because I was borderline of going to get a hysterectomy, because I was getting such bad periods that they were saying, oh, it's your period causing your anemia. So I did the epilation first, and then that didn't work, because I still got one in a way.
Wait, you lasered your lady business and you still got your period?
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's when this doctor was like, okay, no, like something's wrong here. Because they told me if I were to go get a hysterectomy, my blood levels were so low, I would have had to get a blood transfusion before and after the surgery. And I was like, okay, I'm not comfortable. Like, something that ain't right. That sounds pretty risky. And he goes, no. He goes, before we do that, like, let's try this. And after I did the iron infusions, he came back in, I think it was like 2 months and 4 months later, and did follow-up blood work, and I didn't have to get the hysterectomy. I have to get the blood transfusion.
Yeah. I'm not a doctor, which I think is obvious to anybody who listens. But if you have any kind of autoimmune stuff going on, or in general, you're a lady and you feel run down, tired, you're a little snappy with people, confused, foggy, get dizzy, anything like that.
Oh my God, get your iron checked.
Get your iron checked. And don't take it's in range as an answer. Listen to what Addie said in the thyroid episode. If you're a woman of baby making age, over 70 at least, and if you want if you want to feel well, I'm a huge proponent after I found out that my iron was low and saw what havoc it was wreaking on my life. And now, every day, I walk around here like a pill pusher with vitamin D,
100%.
iron, an ascorbic acid, a couple of different vitamins. I just walk around and just leave them.
I take the men's Centrum because the women's Centrum has extra iron.
Mm-hmm.
And where I got the infusion, I didn't want to give myself too much.
Right. Oh, no, I understand. It's like gassing up your car. And you don't want it to get too low, but you don't want it to overflow.
Like putting a little octane boost in your body. Like every now and then you see people pour those little additives in your car. I find it's like the same thing. Like your body is only what you put in it. You know what I mean? You can only get out of it what you put in it.
I just watched an iron infusion bring Arden back to life again. So we got
that's crazy.
Yeah, what had happened to her was low iron. We got an infusion. Didn't realize the low iron was because of crazy periods. So we pumped her iron back up, watched her feel better, and we're like, we fixed it. And then it went back down again.
The next one, yeah.
And we're like, wait, what happened? Then we started really talking to her. So she was young and she wasn't really saying a lot, but we started noticing she was going through a lot of accoutrements for a period of time. And and we were like, what's going on? And it was turned out she was getting her period for 11 days in a row. And then getting a break for a couple of days and then getting it again.
Wow.
And it was just happening over and over and over again. So
that poor girl.
Oh my God. It took us a month to figure out what to try to do. Then we decided to put her on birth control. Then the first birth control they gave her wasn't strong enough. They made us use that for 2 months before they said to up it. So by the time we got to the birth control that was right, we were 4 or 5 months into it. It took a couple of months on that birth control to regulate her periods, and then we got her another infusion, and then the infusions don't work right away. So now, just in the last 2 weeks, has she started feeling? She's starting acting like herself again. She's not dragging all over the house and stuff. So
it's crazy what iron, low iron, can do to you.
Yeah, it's literally like you're dying, and yet it's not enough that you would notice it because of that. It's that slow fall that you don't notice you're falling. You
pretty much until you're at the edge and you can't fall anymore.
Right. And then you're just out of your mind. And then people are like, why are you such a jerk?
When I got my iron infusion, I got my first one June the 1st. And I went in to emerge in DKA on June the 3rd. And part of what my pain clinic doctor said, what happened is my body was so dead. You know what I mean? It was just, they told me I was borderline of a coma. And when I got that iron, he said, I gave myself something good really fast and my body didn't know what to do. And that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. Even though it was healthy health, it's still my body just didn't know what to do.
So much going on. You really might a year from now be a different person.
I think so.
Yeah. It's interesting. You know what I mean? You put out the body fire and now let's wait and see how, because even when you get an infusion, it doesn't work immediately because your body's constantly making red blood cells. And prior to you having enough ferritin, iron in your system, etc., your body was making these cells with incomplete building blocks. And now it makes new ones with the correct amount of ferritin in your system.
Well, he told me that's why he did it at 2, 4, and 6 months, was to watch the progression of it, I guess.
Yeah.
Because because some people need it for more than 3 months. I did 3 months. And luckily I haven't needed any more, you know what I mean, yet. Mm-hmm. And my iron's still good. I just had my blood work done about 2 weeks ago at the clinic down here, and they told me my iron was still good.
Yeah.
My TSH is below 2. My A1C is 5.8.
Oh, cow.
And yeah, but compared to what I was last year, I already feel like a whole different person.
You almost made me cry. And the conversation was not going like that. You just rattled off your numbers and I got a little misty here. I'm so happy for you.
But it's crazy that, and my doctor team, my team knows it, that if I would have listened to them, I would not be where I was.
Yeah.
So if I would have, you know what I mean? If I would have did the 10, 10, and 10, now I got to wait 3 months for a follow-up appointment to make a change.
Right.
Then you got to wait, you know what I mean? Wait. So in order to get where I am, listening and waiting for appointments, it would have taken me a couple years.
Yeah.
I did it. I got to where I needed to be without before I even got a chance to see them.
I demand that those people send me 2 months of their salary. What do you think of that?
And the even worse, but here, like up here on this side of Canada, not a whole lot of people have type 1 because, I mean, there's not a whole lot of, like, it's not a big population here.
Okay.
But no one in my clinic had a T-Slim. So when I did my training, my endo nurse sat beside me and did hers too.
You guys did it together? Well, that's nice. At least that's...
And it was funny. Well, it was funny because before you do it, they send you a thing that says, watch all these videos. And I was already like, I mean, oh my God, I'd already listened to your podcast 3 times over. You know what I mean? Like, right. I was ready for this pump. And we get in there and the woman's talking and she's asking, like, you know, page 6 questions. And I looked right at her. I'm like, girl, I have an hour. Did you read the book and watch the videos like she told us to? Like, you're messing with my time here.
I have an hour and then it takes me 4 years to come back and see you again.
Pretty much, like, God. And the trainer just laughed because she couldn't believe from listening to your podcast how advanced I was. Like, we got to talk about, you know, really in-depth stuff because for my training, because of COVID, it was done by Zoom. So they sent me my pump. I didn't get the, you know, the saline test or anything. I was literally just, you know, sent it. They watched my Dexcom. They looked at my blood work. The doctor did up her numbers, and that was what I had to wait for. And it took 2.5 months to get her to do that. It took so long that literally I got tired of waiting. And I started looking up how to do it yourself. The whole math theories of your times and things by 1800 and dividing by this and figuring out my own correction factors. It was my first pump. So I needed to figure out correction factors and hourlies and, you know what I mean, all that stuff. And I just, for curiosity, I made a list of what I thought it was. And I'm closer to, because I got my pump March 11th. So I'm 2-ish months in. And my pump is closer to the values that I figured out than where my endo team had me.
Well, I'm glad for you. That's really lovely.
But again, it's one of those lack of education. And doctors always tell you, don't listen to what you hear and find on the internet. But if I wouldn't have listened to what I found on the internet, I would have died.
Well, Carol, let's be fair. A lot of the things on the internet are ridiculous. This podcast is good.
They are, but if you have common sense,
you could figure out the difference.
You can figure out the difference between fact and bullshit.
Well, but now we're asking for everybody to have common sense. That might be different.
That's the thing. Like, I know, say 1,000 people watch the same thing, you know, maybe 10 of them are going to have common sense, but doctors should be able to, you know, kind of tell the difference a little bit too. Like, if you're scared that your patient knows more than you, don't ignore your patient.
Yeah. And maybe try to figure out what they know.
That's what they did to me. Like, when I was doing things that they couldn't believe how I got there, but I didn't do it their way. They just ignored me when I would call. Or I'd get the, you know, you're doing better than we could help you with. Why are you calling us?
Yeah, you got to do better than that.
I have ADHD. So it's one of those, I strive for, like, I'm very competitive. So my time in range, it has 100% possibility. So if I only have 90%, that means I have 10% failure. Like, that's how I look at it. So to me, that means I can do better.
There's room for improvement.
Exactly. But when you don't have the support, like, I understand that, you know, not everybody cares as much as I do, but there should be help or resources available for the people who actually do care. Well, not just treat everyone and educate everyone like they don't care.
Right. Well, there should be resources for everyone.
But there's not really. Like, when you leave up here as an adult, like I said, I was sent out within 12 hours. I was given no follow-up, no courses, no counseling. I was given a pamphlet in November when I finally made it in. And it had very basic stuff in it. And it had all these free food ranges where, you know, these, you can eat these and you don't got to worry about it. And everything in that book to me was bullshit. Yeah. Because I had learned and proven to myself that that isn't right. But if I questioned it, I'm non-compliant.
It would actually write you up. That's interesting. Oh, yeah. Got like a slip in your file.
Yeah. So it got to the point that I just call them if I need prescriptions now.
You should start writing them up. You should.
Well, it doesn't really do any good up here. Like I've tried on other issues I have, and yeah, you're better off just to pat yourself on the back and realize that, you figured it out and good for you.
Let the rest of it go. That's good advice.
But yeah, that's
amazing.
That's why sometimes I'm like, everyone's like, oh, we need healthcare like Canada. I'm like, oh, if you guys do it, please do it better than we did.
Yeah. Well,
we have great insurance, but there's no private here. So if I lived in Quebec, I could get better care because there's a private clinic. If I lived in Ontario, there's a private clinic. But on the East Coast, there's no private clinic.
So even in a scenario where they are providing free healthcare for everyone, you're saying that where you can spread some money around, you find more competent people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you find people who are more like your thyroid doctor. Remember the one you had on who actually
Addie. Yeah, she's terrific.
Up here, when you get in to see a doctor, it's not like they even read your file, because I've even had to ask them, have you read my file? If you try and give me that, I know that's going to go against this other medication I'm on. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh yeah, no, it's so rushed here and it's so overbooked and stuff that you can't completely blame the doctor. It's the structure of the healthcare system itself.
I see.
Because there's so little doctors and nurses here that they don't have time to give a shit, because they only have 20 minutes with you. And if you're lucky, you get that 20 minutes. Because usually if you go to a doctor's appointment, say your appointment's for 1:00, I get there 10 minutes early. I probably don't get in until 1:15, 1:20. Mm-hmm. So now I'm going into someone else's appointment, but yet at 1:00, they booked in someone else too. So that doctor is expected to see 2 people in that time span. How do you get adequate help and service with someone who doesn't even have time to read your file before you talk to them?
When you come back, do you see the same person or do you see a different person?
You see the same person, but It's another one of those, unless you stick out, it's just they cookie cutter you out the door. It's blah, blah, blah,
yeah.
Sometimes they don't even have time to look you in the eye.
Well, it's a hard job. I mean, it's a difficult job. I mean, I wouldn't want to say 100%, otherwise. Yeah.
But a lot of people always want to blame the doctor, but I know it's not all, because the doctor I have now, the endo, she's awesome. Mm-hmm. But the problem is it took me a bit to get her, but she's so overworked that I get calls from her at 7:00 at night. She emails me. I have her cell number because she knows that, I don't mind the after hours help. And she knows that when she helps me, I'm going to use it.
Right. Plus, it's taken her that long into her day.
Time, so she knows I appreciate the time she has to give me.
Yeah.
But it's so bad up here for appointments. And this was before COVID, that thankfully, because of COVID, doctors can call you now instead of always seeing you in office. Mm-hmm. My rheumatologist the other week called me at 8:30 at night because I agreed to an after hours call. Huh. At 8:30 at night, I'm not expecting a call from my specialist.
Right.
But that's the only time he had time to call me. But I had time to talk to him. It wasn't rushed. You know what I mean? I got a 40-minute call with him.
Sure. Wow.
So it is one good thing, but not every doctor has that time either. Mm-hmm. Because up here, everyone, I think everyone thinks our free healthcare is this big, you just go in and you get help whenever you want. And do you know what I mean? It's free. Yeah, we don't pay for it, but you have to wait.
Yeah, everybody wants to imagine that something that sounds better is better. And I am genuinely not saying healthcare shouldn't be, free. I think it should. But I think you're also being crazy if you don't imagine
equal.
Yeah. You're also being crazy if you don't imagine that people who have more money to throw around aren't getting better service. Forget healthcare for a second. If I go into McDonald's,
I'm 100%. I know a personal experience where I know someone who needed an MRI. Now, I can't afford to pay for an MRI out of pocket. They're, I think, $1,800 out of pocket.
That's a lot of money.
And then if you have insurance, you know what I mean? You can submit your receipt or whatever. So if you go into a doctor and they're like, okay, you need an MRI, but we can't get you in for 6 months. If you can't afford to go to the private place here in New Brunswick and pay that, you got to wait that 6 months. Mm-hmm. But if you're the person who can go in and the doctor says, you got to wait 6 months, and you're like, no. I'll just go pay for it next week. You'll have it.
Yeah.
They will actually call the MRI office and you'll get in. They'll squeeze you in because they know you're serious. That's how they take, like I find in my own personal experience that when I threaten to pay for something or do it on my own, they take that as, oh my God, she's serious. And then they kind of rush it a little bit more.
That's interesting. It's like, it's the version of giving $20 to the maitre d' and saying, please don't put me near the bathroom.
It is, but when they say, you know, like it doesn't matter or whatever, but in a way it does, because if you threaten to do it yourself, they don't want you to do it yourself. They'll find a way to get you in. Like I've gone from having to wait 6 months to being told we can get you in tomorrow.
It just seems like if it takes 6 months to get an MRI, if you bought one more MRI machine and hired a few more people, then it would take 3 months, which then would make me think if we bought another MRI machine, you know, like maybe just a couple of MRI machines and some technicians is the answer.
It is, but I don't know if you pay attention to how Canadians waste money on absolutely the stupidest things ever. But yeah, that's why we don't have any money for those said MRI machines, because we give away a lot of money and spend a lot of money on stupid things.
Are you talking about that game where you push the thing on the ice? Like,
oh, hockey?
No, not that one. What's the one that that was funny, but that's not what I mean. What is it? Shoot, what is it called?
Ringette?
I mean, you can keep guessing if you want, but it's an Olympic game.
We have lacrosse, but you'll play that ice, I guess.
Oh, wait. Here it is. I found a picture of it. I'm going to click on the picture and see what they call it. That, by the way, everyone, that's how the internet works. Curling.
Oh, curling. Yeah.
It's a lot of money.
They throw the rocks and stones around and try to get in the circles there at the end.
It's mesmerizing to watch on television.
It is, but it's one of those sports you're like, it's kind of like watching, to me, it's like watching someone play poker or play pool, like, or darts. You're just like, why? But you can't help but watch because it's so cool how they can actually, you know, glide that stone thing right where they need it to go.
It's amazing. It really is. I'm assuming we wouldn't have this if it wasn't for Canadians. It looks like 2 kitchen mops and a stone with a handle on an ice thing, and it's fantastic.
Kind of like sliding a kettle, like one of those old kettles you used to see on like wood stoves back in the day, like slide one of those down the ice. Oh my God,
it's wonderful. It really is. Carol, listen, I want to
thank things that amuse Canadians.
Yeah, I want to thank you for doing this. You were terrific. I thought you did a really good job of presenting what was happening to you. There's something about our connection where I couldn't talk too much because you would like just keep going, or that was your ADHD. I'm not 100% sure which one it was, but
I'd say a little bit of column A and B.
But it worked fantastic for this because you just did such a good job, and you were answering questions as I'd get a question in my mouth and you would keep talking. I was like, oh, she's got this. So, is there anything though that we didn't talk about that you wanted to that didn't come up? I want to ask before I let you go.
Not really, just to remind people that if you are like, if you're a parent or say you're listening and you're like a friend of someone, don't think that you can't get diabetes, type 1 diabetes, just because you're not under 21.
Yeah.
And you're not in perfect health or whatever. Because I think I got it because I had a serious infection and stuff. And if you have other autoimmune diseases, always watch for piggyback diseases.
Yeah.
Because everything's an umbrella from what I learned. Like it started off as 1, then it developed into 2, and everything's related. So don't ignore anything, and don't ever let your doctor like dismiss you. Like if you honestly believe it, fight for it.
A huge thank you to one of today's sponsors, Gvoke Glucagon. Find out more about Gvoke HypoPen at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. You spell that GVOKEGLUCAGON.com/juicebox. I'd also like to thank Touched by Type 1 and remind you to go to touchedbytype1.org and find them on Instagram and Facebook. And of course, t1dexchange.org/juicebox. Go take that survey. I swear to you, take you less than like 8 minutes. You can do it right there on your phone. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast.